my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Andrew Jeavons, the CEO of Survey Analytics. Andrew?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Really great that you could be with us here. I'm also going to be assisted very ably by Esther LaVielle, who's our VP of Client Services at Survey Analytics. I'd just like to describe a little bit who we are, just for a couple of seconds. Survey Analytics, we produce survey software which runs on the web, it runs on smartphones, and it runs on tablets, such as Android and iPad tablets. There's also a set of analytical suites, and it's really designed for enterprises or anybody who needs to do surveys to give you all the tools you need from start to finish. It's a great system, easy to use, and we aim to offer a wide range of facilities. So we have the Survey Analytics Enterprise Research Platform. We have a product called Second Prism, which is taking advantage of iPads at the moment to give you a great platform to visualize and do some basic analytics on the go. So, you know, when you're sat on the plane, you can be looking at the results of your data collection efforts. Survey Pocket is our mobile field data collection module. This runs on iPads and Android tablets, such as the Nexus tablets from Google, and this is a great tool for going off into the field with or without a connection to the internet to collect data. And I would point out that Conjoint does work on Survey Pocket, so you can actually carry out conjoint studies in the field. Survey Swipe is our smartphone product. This enables users, usually in a panel, to do surveys anywhere really, in their home, in the store. It also comes with facilities such as geolocational triggering, so that when people are at a certain location we can push a survey to them, like when they go to the drugstore or to the grocery. One other set of products that we're bringing out is Life Metrics. This is linked to Survey Swipe, and this is a collection of passive data. This is data about what's going on the smartphones, how people are moving around, what applications they have running, and all that can be rolled up to give even greater insight into, you know, what your customers and panelists are doing. Next slide, Esther. And that's just a picture of me and Esther. Esther, of course, is far better looking than I am. I've been in the market research industry for about 25 years. My background is psychology and statistics. Esther's in charge of all our client relations and works very hard to make sure everybody's kept happy. And she has a great deal of experience with survey analytics and market research in general. Next slide, please. Just a quick agenda. We're going to cover what we mean by chainsaw conjoint, which is the title of this webinar. A little bit about the theory and logic between discrete choice analysis, when you can use it. We're going to look at examples of how you use it. We're going to see how within our tool you can design a discrete choice project, how you write the questionnaire, and the sort of analytics that we are able to give you for discrete choice conjoint, and some tips and best practices. Over the years, we've run quite a few projects, and we've managed to come up with a few guidelines, which is very often what you'll need when you start off on these projects. And we're going to give an opportunity for some questions and answers. If you have questions, you will see on the GoToWebinar box there is a section marked questions, logically enough, which is where you can type your questions. And please, you know, if there's anything you want to ask us, just put them in there. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by chainsaw conjoint? Now, this is a phrase that started off in our office from one of the product managers, and he was talking about something that in a previous company, a term that somebody had used, chainsaw math. And what we're trying to say here is that we see that our conjoint tool is really a simple, easy-to-use tool. It's powerful, it's durable, you can keep using it. We think it's impressive, and it gets the job done. Now, people often think about conjoint that they have to be hugely complicated designs and studies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That isn't actually true. The advantage of our conjoint and the way we price our products and services is that you can do lots of these with very little overhead, and very often that's a good way to go. Next slide, please. What you have to remember in all this is that a series of studies working towards a conclusion is often better than one big study. And I'll talk about that a bit more. So what is conjoint analysis? It's based on a theory of trade-off to do with decisions that people make about products. It's been developed over the past 50 years or so. It was originally based on sort of an interesting piece of mathematical psychology called Lucy's choice axiom. But what it is, it's a way of presenting to possible consumers or your panelists a series of possible product configurations, like, you know, what kind of properties would be in a product, and asking them what they would pick. The central idea of conjoint is that for any purchase decision consumers make, they trade off. They say, well, you know, I really want a large package size, but I don't want the price to be over $10, so I'll accept a smaller package size as long as it's $10. Or I really like the lime scent, even though it's a really small package, I'll go for the lime scent because that's really what I like the most about the product. And this is how people make those kinds of decisions when you're purchasing things, is they trade off the different characteristics of a product. And so survey analytics uses discrete choice analysis tasks, which is best simulates the purchase process for consumers. We want to make the study as realistic as possible, as if people were actually in a store making a decision. And discrete choice is generally seen as the best way to do this. Next slide, please. Going back to our theme about statistics, and conjoint is a statistical procedure. Statistics aren't accurate. I know that's a shock, but when you look at the theory of statistics, it's all about probabilities, that things are probably this way and probably not that way. If you want precision, you're not going to get it from statistics, and statistics aren't designed to be precise. They're designed to give you an idea of what's going on and to give you probabilities and certainties that things are one way or not the other. Statistics aren't magic. You can't just throw a badly formed idea into conjoint or into any other statistical technique and expect to get a magic answer, expect it to sort it all out. The statistical work you do, and this comes down to conjoint as well, it's as good as your design, it's as good as your theory of what's going on. So you have to take some care to think about how your consumers behave when they're purchasing your product or service. And one thing to always remember about any statistics, any survey you do, and any conjoint study you do, is that the results are as good as the sample that you use. If you use people who are not representative of your consumer population, the results won't be much good. You'll get results, but they won't extrapolate well to your business. So it is important to remember that when it's all said and done, what the analysis produces is only as good as the sample that you use. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, there tends to be a temptation that I've seen with conjoint in particular is to throw everything in. You know, if you have a product that has 10 different characteristics, you do a conjoint study and you throw them all in and you throw the levels, different levels of those characteristics, and you throw all sorts of other things in that you might want to put in, and so you get this whole kitchen sink thing. The kitchen sink is not a good idea. Doing very complicated statistics very often, unless you really, really know what you're doing, isn't a good idea. Doing a very, very complicated conjoint, unless there's a really, really good reason, is often not a good idea. If you can simplify things, if you can do things in a series of logical steps, which we think and we allow people to do with the way the product is structured, this is often a much better idea. Don't be tempted to throw everything in because it really won't work out very well. Next slide, please. So if we look at a practical example here, and this is just on two levels. One, it's to give you an example of what a possible choice process would be. Two, somebody said to me once that all presentations should contain puppies. So here are 9 puppies. So if you're going to buy a puppy, you might look at the breed. And I know Esther really recently acquired a dog, so she was probably looking at the breed, where you got the dog from, what size it's going to be, the price of it, what kind of care is needed, what kind of personality the dog has, and what kind of lifespan. All these things are things that you may trade off when you want to buy a puppy, and this is a very good example of the kind of event that Conjoint is designed to model and designed to give you information about. Next slide, please. So the theory and logic of Conjoint Analysis is that it'll help you evaluate new products, that is, products that you might want to launch into the marketplace that maybe don't exist at all at the moment, or to see what effect it will have on varying your existing range of products. So adding a feature or taking away a feature, or altering the price, or altering package size, or any other host of different things. Conjoint can be much cheaper than developing new products in the marketplace and putting them out there and then just hoping that they'll be okay. New product launches have a rather scary rate of failure. I think it's something like 70 to 75% the last time I looked at it. So it's, you know, it's a good idea not to spend all that money on launching new product, to do some testing, to do some conjoint, to see what kind of reception it'll get. You can get pretty much real-time feedback on new products or variations. You do, with Discrete Choice, get to simulate what your target consumers would do in the marketplace. Discrete Choice works on the principle that people make a choice. Other forms of conjoint, there's a form called full profile, which is where consumers or respondents are asked to rank different characteristics, different configurations of products against each other. Now, that can give you a lot of information. And in the old days, this was kind of a card sort task. You had cards which had product descriptions on them, and you ranked them. You said, yeah, this one's the best and this one's the worst. And you might have 20 or 30 of them, so people would sit and sort all these cards. But that really doesn't reflect the way somebody buys a packet of cornflakes or cereal in the supermarket. You stand there and you go, well, you know, kind of like that, like this, I think I'll have that one. So while a lot of data comes out of full profile, it's not necessarily very realistic in terms of the study as to what people actually do. And this is the great thing about Discrete Choice. It simulates that decision process by the consumers. Next slide, please. One question we get asked when we're presenting this to people is, how do we come up with the numbers? Now, I have no doubt in the audience there are some of you who are very skilled at conjoint. And so we use a maximum likelihood calculation with a Nelder-Mead simplex optimization algorithm. We have a very clever consultant who came up with this for us, and we have him on retainer to do all the clever stuff for us and tell us what we should be doing. If you don't understand what I just said, that's okay. You don't have to. Design options, which are again something else that we're asked about a lot. We have random. We have something called de-optimal design. We decided to include that because that we think you know is a good general purpose design approach. Or you can import your own design. Now, if you don't really know what a design is, if I was to say to you, okay, you need an orthogonal design, and you don't know what that is, you shouldn't be doing your own designs. Random and de-optimal will serve you very well for a wide range of situations. If you do know what a design is, if you have a specific design that you want to run, you can import it. Very often, if you do that, you'll also want to export the raw data, which you can do, and run your own analytics. So you can use our tool in that way. We allow that for the people who are more expert. You can use it as a platform to run the actual task, and you can do your own analysis, and you can produce your own design. So you can have confidence in the results you receive. We spent a lot of time researching what we should be doing here. Next slide, please. So what are the core concepts of conjoint analysis? The core ideas are that for any product, it has a set of attributes, and this can be color, as I said before, it can be package size, it can be the weight of the dog, it can be how long the dog lives, it can be all sorts of things, but the characteristics that you've worked out are important about the products. Now, we're going to run a test. We're going to show you something called the Seattle Tourism Study. And there we have a set of attributes. One of them are the hours, the time of day. So that's one example of an attribute. We have tour type. what type of tour it is. Now, you could see then for time of day, we might have many different levels. We could say, well, it's a morning tour, it's a mid-morning tour, it's a mid-afternoon tour, it's an evening tour. The type could be short, long, very detailed, no guide. And these are all examples of how an attribute can have different levels. So let's go back to our dog example. You could have small dog, medium dog, big dog. Those are examples of the different levels of an attribute, which would be size of dog. And one of the critical things about Conjoint is deciding what your attributes are and what levels you want of these attributes. Next slide, please. Utilities or part worths are really the output of Conjoint and what you're really interested in. Part worths are a measure of how important certain attributes and levels of attributes are to the consumer. And this is really the aim of Conjoint, is to give you these numerical values, utilities for the various levels of attributes. Now, the other thing that it can give you is relative importance. That is, okay, out of these 4 attributes that a dog may have, which one appears to be the most important one when people make a decision? Now, it might be size. It might be the personality of the dog. When we look at the tour type, it could be the length of the tour. So Conjoint can also give you some key insights in that respect as to, what is the importance of the attributes when it comes to making a decision. Next slide, please. So setting up a conjoint analysis project, it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. You've got to work out the different pieces. You've got to work out who your target population is. You've got to work out the attributes that you want to test, the levels of the attributes. You have to decide the design. That's relatively easy. And so once you've got all those things together, you can start running your project. Next slide, please. Going back to the designs, next slide. We have 3 different sorts. We have random. Now, designs refer to the way that the various levels of the various attributes are combined and presented to the respondent to make a choice. The best way generally is to use random. You randomly select different attributes, different levels of attributes to produce your product configurations, and then the respondent picks one of them as their choice. Random is, anything random is always the statistician's savior, if you like. If you do it random, you've got a good chance that you won't have any biases in there, and that's something that's quite important. Now, random's fine if you've got enough respondents, if you can run enough tasks. And there are some measures of thumb we'll look at later on that will give you some idea about that. And random's good where you feel you've got a lot of respondents and you can really be very thorough about the number of tasks that you run. Random isn't so good where you think you might have some limitations. D-optimal is an algorithm that produces an optimal design. It works out based on the levels of the attributes and a couple of other pieces of information, the best way for these attributes to present it in product configurations. And one of the things that affects random is things called prohibitions that we'll come on to a bit later on, which is basically you're talking about constraints that you have. For instance, you can't have the luxury soap powder that has a $1 price for a 2-quart bucket. That would be a prohibition because that pricing would never occur for that particular product configuration. And prohibitions can be very important because they allow you to reflect the real world and the way that your products work in the real world. D-optimal is good when you've got a lot of prohibitions, and it will work random to give you the optimal design. And as we said, we have an import design facility. It imports things in SPSS design format, which is kind of an industry standard. And as I said before, this is where you have a specific design in mind that you want to run, and you will very probably want to export your raw data after you've done that. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to hand over to my able assistant, Esther.
Thank you, Andrew. So here we're just going to be talking about how to set up a conjoint analysis question. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, before you begin to create a choice-based conjoint question, you must first determine the number of features and attributes as well as levels that you'd like to test. It's also important to make sure that everyone involved understands the definitions of these features, attributes, and also the levels that you like to use before creating your conjoint question. One of the things we do want to reiterate before we get into talking about this is that you can also add additional information or add additional question types to your conjoint design, so you will be provided with some rich data for your analysis all in one survey. So to get started here, we're going to just show you some screenshots and then I'll go into a demo. To set up the random de-optimal area import design, it all goes through the same page. First thing you do is you set up your features and attributes as you would see, and add your headers and instructions. And once you add your features, the levels below will pop up, and then you want to set up your levels for each attribute. So for example here, we have hours as one of our levels, and then, hours for one of your features, and then the levels would be, 1 to 2 hours or 2 to 4 hours for a tour type. The next thing that you would do after you would set up your conjoint question is to go ahead and review the conjoint parameters. And here you're allowed to set up some prohibited pairs. The engine will not display two levels that already have been marked as prohibited in the same concept, such as for a product, for users to choose. So for example here, you can say, that you don't want to have a specific tour type be, between 4 to 6 hours because there's not enough material to show during that time. Or it's something that you don't think that is very feasible for you to run. So you can set these prohibited pairs. There's no limit to what you can add. I have talked to other conjoint consultants who would like to say that it's probably not always the best thing to add prohibited pairs, as if you're using the random design, you want to be able to look at all the possibilities. But if you absolutely will not be creating a product, service, or package that will include specific pairs, then you can add those in here. So once you set up the prohibited pairs, you want to go ahead and save your changes to your question type. If using the random question type or design, then you can go in and review the concept simulator. And what this does, it allows you to review the number of times a particular level will be shown if you are targeting a particular number of people. So it will be used to determine what choices will be presented to the respondents when your survey is actually deployed. And it's used as a guidance. It just kind of gives you a really good idea. So if you have 25 people you're targeting, or 100 or 300 people, you can go in and say, how many times is the level going to show up? And this will give you a good idea of what that would be. The next one is the de-optimal design. So if you decide after you set up your question type or your template, then you can go into the settings of the question and change the design into de-optimal, and then also generate a de-optimal design and select the versions that you like. And then you can go ahead and do a quick preview by selecting Start and save your settings. And on the side here, it will give you an idea of the type of designs that you'll be able to see at each task type. And you can review, based off of the number of people that are taking it, what are they going to see at each task count. Again, as Andrew said earlier, the import design option, it allows people to create their own designs using the SPSS design format. And you still need to create the question type using the adding in the features and the levels. But after you do that, you can go into the settings and then change the design type into import and then upload an Excel spreadsheet of the concepts and attributes that you would like to show on each page. So here's a quick preview of what a typical conjoint would look like. So you can see, an example of a question. You have two different Torah types, and they can choose between one or two. Other things you can also do in a conjoint is you can also add some pictures. So whether or not you would like to include pictures on the top or in the bottom, or you like to do a pop-up where you can define or add pictures for each of the different levels, those are possible and you can turn those on. So what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to go ahead and close the, or kind of minimize the Keynote presentation down. And I'm going to go into an example that I'm trying to put together here. I am living in the Northwest here, and it's been pretty cold, and I'm sure it's been pretty cold around the majority of the U.S. as well. And so on my mind, I'm dreaming about a vacation to Hawaii. And so instead of doing a Seattle tour one, I thought maybe it would be fun to do one for Hawaii. So some of the things that, when I'm thinking about a vacation package to Hawaii, I'm looking at, flight times, I'm looking at, the hotel, whether or not I want an ocean view or a garden view or no view. Do I want a car? Or what kind of price do I want to pay? And what kind of activities do I want to do? Do I want to do a luau? Do I want to go in a shark tank and check out some great white sharks or anything like that? So if I were a company trying to sell me a package, these are the things that I'd like to see in a package before I select it. So I've already put in a very nice picture of Hawaii. And so let's go ahead and get started in adding the question. So we're going to go into the add-on modules and select the discrete choice conjoint and open up the headers and instructions. Just 1 second here. And so the very first thing here is you want to go ahead and add in your instructions. I just wrote mine out, so I'm just going to copy and paste here. So we're just going to show 3 screens of 2 different vacation packages to Hawaii. Of the options shown, select which one you'd like to purchase or would be most likely to purchase. And then we're going to add in the features that I talked about that were important. So we're talking about flight times, hotels, activities, car, and price. And we can add those in here underneath our features. After we add the features in, you'll see all the levels opening up on the bottom here. So for flight times, I'm just choosing morning, noon, afternoon, and evening, adding those in. And then the hotel, we'll be looking at ocean view, garden view, no view. And the different activities. Luau, snorkeling, booze cruise, that sounds like fun. And the shark tank. And then the car. I know some people like to have the car the whole trip. Some people like part of the trip. Some people like to have no car at all. That's up to you, and I want to have that as an option. And then, of course, pricing. So I have different pricing options here below. $1,400, $1,749, $2,000, and $2,500. So based off of these levels and features, and assuming that I'm probably going to target maybe 300 to 500 responses, I'm just going to set my task count as 3. As I said, there's only going to be 3 screens of this. And I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to have 2 concepts per task. And the concepts per task will basically, in layman's terms, it's just showing you 2 different packages on the screen. You just choose, one or the other. the simpler you display these to people, the more likely they will be able to review and analyze and decide which one they would like. So let's go ahead and save that question here. And so once you save that, then you can go into your settings. And this is where you can make sure that you have the random design open, or the optimal, or the import design. And then you can also check the number of responses here as well to review. Number of times levels are shown. I'm just going to keep it as random. And then I can go ahead and set up my prohibited pairs. So some good prohibited pairs that I probably would consider is that I would never do an ocean view room for $1,400, because that's a money maker for me. Everybody wants an ocean view when they're in Hawaii. And I probably wouldn't do an ocean view at $1,749, so make that some sort of a premium. And then I can add some other things as well. So I can say that an evening travel will never cost $2,500. So if people travel in the evening, then there's more likely that they would save some money if they travel to Hawaii in the evening versus in the morning. And then of course I can do one where there's no car, and then they would obviously not have to spend so much. So here's some examples of some prohibited pairs. I'll go ahead and save those. And then you can also check those to see what those are. And if you'd like to add more, you can add those there. One of the other great things here, like I said earlier, if you'd like to add some pictures or add some pop-ups, you can go into these levels or features and go ahead and add your pictures or text. So if you'd like to define the levels inside here while you're running the survey, I'm just going to go ahead and put test for the morning one. Then you can do that. So here's my example, and we're going to go ahead and do a preview of this. So this is what a typical respondent will see in a conjoint question type. So I can just pick which one I would like. And we're going to the next one. Okay. And then now we're at the very last one. So that's the gist of what a typical conjoint would look like. And once you gather your data, then we have the analytics tab in which it will show you all of the data available in your report. So we're going to go, and I'm just going to show you exactly where this would be, and we're going to go back to the presentation. We'll have Andrew join me in helping analyze the rest of the screen. So let's go ahead here, and this will be the place that you can do all your analytics. So that is the conclusion of the live demo, and let me go ahead and launch the keynote back up. All right. So let's go ahead and review the data. So we're going to look at the utility calculations and the relative importance again. So here, again, the relative importance, as Andrew had mentioned earlier, basically it attributes the attributes that we're showing you on the screen here. We have it displayed in a pie chart that you can see in the report. And based off of the calculations that are given, we can see that the tour type is definitely the most significant feature or attribute which determines which tour that they would take in comparison to all of the other features that we have. So basically, the relative importance is first calculated by the differences between the highest and lowest average utility for each of the features, and then the value is divided by the total across all of the attributes. And then, of course, the end result is the relative importance. The next screen here, we're going to show you another one, which is the relative importance and average utility values. Again, this allows you a different way to view the relative importance percentage side by side with the average utility values. And the average utility, which again is also known as the parts worth, is the level utilities for the conjoint attributes. And when multiple attributes come together to describe the total worth of the product concept, the utility values for the separate parts of the product you'll see are the parts worth. So here, based on the data shown on the screen here, Andrew, what's your quick analysis of the relative importance and average utility or parts worth that you see?
Thanks, Esther. Yes, so relative importance value for tour type is the highest. So this seems to be the attribute that contributes the most towards decision making. The second one is the hours, the last is the time of day. Now let's look at the average utilities, and there we see that Weird Seattle Tour is the largest, and it's saying that that's the one that people like. So Weird is good. People like the Weird Seattle Tour, and I can attest to the fact that Seattle can be pretty weird. It's a great town, but there are some weird things about it. One of the weird things is where our office is. Anyway, second after that, Chocolate Tour looked pretty good there. And it appears that the one that is the least appealing is the Seattle Scenic Tour, which is a bit unfair on Seattle, but that's what that's showing us. Now, if we look at the hours, we're seeing that 2 to 4 hours, the middle value there on top, with a value of 0.537, seems to be the most appealing. So this is what the utility values and relative importance can tell you about your product or service. Next slide, Esther.
Oh, sorry, I was having a hard time hearing you there. So the next one here is the best and worst profile. Basically, based on the average utilities of the parts worth given, our conjoint tool will automatically display for you the best and worst profiles. In general, the highest utility values give us the best profiles, while the lowest gives us the worst profiles. So you can see that on our best profile, 2 to 4 hours afternoon tour, and the Seattle tour seems to be the best preferred tour, the most preferred tour, and the worst profile is a 4 to 6 hour morning Seattle scenic tour. I guess people don't want to be on a tour for that long, so that makes sense. So we have that set up for you. And you can use these as kind of a benchmark to help you run the market segment simulator as well. So that's our next topic on the list here, which is our market segment simulator. And it's probably my favorite tool that we offer with the conjoint, and it gives you the ability to measure the market share of products and features that are non-existent today. And it also allows you to measure the gain and loss of market share based on changes in the market without having to actually create these products or services and actually see how it really does. So the important things, important steps when you are putting together a conjoint segment simulator is the very first thing is to identify and describe the different products or concepts that you want to investigate, and we call those profiles. So, for example, it's kind of like setting up your ideal situation or your non-ideal situation. So you can put together your tour type. You want to do a weird tour. The hours you want to look at maybe 1 to 2 hours. Your time of day. You maybe want to see if there's anything in the evening. And these are going to take, based off of the respondents that have answered, they're going to give you a good idea of what that market share could probably be. The second thing you would do is you can find out all of the existing products that are available in the market segment and simulate the market share of the products to establish a baseline. The third thing you would do is try out new services and ideas and see how the market share shifts based on new products and configurations. So this gives you an opportunity to put together products and packages that didn't even cross your mind while you're originally putting together your conjoint, but based off of the items that you have, your features and levels in the conjoint, you can kind of play with this and be a little bit creative and see how that how that compares to other packages that you're considering. So to set that up, in terms of setting up the simulator, you would just go into the online tools and create a simulator profile, and then select the kind of features and levels that you would like to set up. So again, for the hours, you want to go in and see, whether or not you want to look at 2 to 4 hours versus 4 to 6. You can select the time of day, you can select the tour type, and you can have up to 10 profiles and run those simultaneously and see how the market share differs between the others. So once you have this set up, go ahead and click on the simulation and you can see the results of that. And so here's a screenshot of the output that you would see. The market simulator uses the utility values to project the probability of choice and hence the market share. And so where we have here below is based on the fact that the hours are the same, the time of day, but the tour type is different. We can see that profile number 1 has the higher market share versus profile number 2. And you can see the output below, which is, you'll see your vote count, which is based off of the number of people who've taken the survey, and they split it across the profiles. And then you'll look at the market share. Again, these are calculated based off of their previous answers, and then you can run various probabilities from that. So now that we know how to use this market segment simulator, what kind of questions can we ask and find out with this segmentation simulator? A really fun and quick example is, if your clients are coming to you and asking, what if I have a tour of 1 to 2 hours as opposed to 4 to 6 hours in the afternoon for a Rated Seattle tour? And so what we would do again is we would set up the simulator as usual, and then we go back into the market share and see, that if we were to change the hours and keep everything else constant, that the market share will change. So it seems that people prefer doing tours, only 1 to 2 hours. They're not really interested in blocking out the majority of their day to specifically be on a tour. So perhaps this is probably a good area for people to invest in, and also make sure that they have a pretty tight schedule so they continue to make money and make the times more available for people, and they can fit it into their schedule when they come on a tour. So let's talk about some tips for a successful conjoint analysis project. And we'll have Andrew join me on this one here. The very first thing a lot of people come to, and they hear the word conjoint, they're like, ooh, that looks like fun, I really like this, but where do I start? Where do I begin? Being a market researcher in the past, I could definitely say that you probably would like to start with some qualitative research first. Ask them, what are the top attributes, and what kind of ranges, what kind of language do you want to use, and this will help you with determining the kind of people you'd like to target for your conjoint. Using things like focus groups or surveys with open-ended questions will help define what your top attributes are that you need for your study. Again, we want to stay away from the kitchen sink and use this opportunity to really get down and define what these top features you would like to use. Other things you can use that we would like to suggest is like a crowdsourcing tool like IdeaScout, and it allows you to go in and collect opinions and allow people to vote up and down what they think is the most important thing. And you can use other survey methods as well. So these are just some things to get started, and then from there you can build a survey. Sometimes you have a really good idea of what the different attributes are. Some people don't know, and it takes some time to define it, but it's absolutely important to make sure you have a good idea of what your attributes and your levels are before you even get started with Conjoint. So Andrew, this is a big one here. What sample size to start with?
Yeah, thanks, Esther. Yes, this is a question that comes up very frequently. How big a sample size do you want to have for a successful conjoint study? The glib answer is as many as possible. And while that sounds rather flippant, it is actually the truth. You really want as many respondents as possible. And as I said earlier, you want them to be representative of your target population. However, we can also got another little rule of thumb here from somebody called Richard Johnson, who was one of the pioneers of conjoint analysis. And this little equation here, NTA over C greater than 1,000, where N is the number of respondents you've got, T is the number of tasks, that's the number of alternatives you're asking people to evaluate, how many times you want them to make a choice. A is the number of alternatives per task, if you've got 2 alternatives or 3 or 4 or 5. And C is the largest number of levels for any one attribute. That is, which attribute has the most different levels. It might be price, it might be package size. Now, you want the result of this little equation on the left here to be greater than 1,000. And so if you do that calculation and it's coming in at less than 1,000, you want to perhaps increase the number of respondents, increase the number of tasks, anything like that to get the value over 1,000. Now, this isn't a precise calculation. This is a rule of thumb that Johnson came up with, but I feel it's a good guideline. It is the sort of thing that you should work out whenever you're doing a conjoint study. From what we can see, sample sizes tend to be anywhere from 200 to 1,200, and there seems to be a sort of psychological sweet spot of 300, but it does depend on all these other things as to whether or not that's enough people. That's all I've got on that one.
Thank you. All right, so some other practices and tips here to get started with conjoint. You want to make sure to keep your options clear and simple as possible. No more than 20 trade-off exercises, no more than 5 or 6 attributes. Definitely try your best to keep the ranges simple here. Again, we don't want to go with the kitchen sink, and hence, chainsaw conjoint, at the end of the day, really is just trying to run a simple and effective conjoint. Also from another conjoint expert I talked to, he says that, it's okay to ask intimate questions of current customers, then trying potential customers. Don't let them stop you from trying. So what that means is, feel free to ask some, questions prior to the conjoint, some questions after that, whether or not it's open-ended or anything like that, so you can validate your answers from the conjoint with some either open-ended question types or some closed-ended question types. In general, you'd also want to make sure to follow some good online survey techniques and test your survey out to make sure that it works properly, and keep it clear. Make the respondents know that it's strictly confidential, and keep the surveys short if you can. If you are looking at a complex survey but you want to make sure you get some good data from it, try to keep it around 15 to 20 minutes, and also provide some incentives. So let's talk about our competition versus survey analytics, our choice-based conjoint. One of the great things about our tool is that we do offer flexible pricing available. I believe that it is probably the most user-friendly conjoint tool in the market. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And I'm probably the most illiterate compared to a lot of people that can use computers. It offers real-time reporting, which is really nice, especially with using a conjoint analysis question type in a survey. And the pricing includes integrated research tools that can enhance your efficiencies and depth in your research strategies. And you'll also have a dedicated account management and support available for you 24 hours a day. So I know we don't have too much time, but I would like to open up this time for any questions from the audience. I believe Andrew and Dana, you guys have the questions out there. Maybe
yes, if you'd like to type your question into the questions box there on the GoToWebinar control panel, we can see them and hopefully we can answer them. Seeing stunned silence.
Andrew, this is Dana. I can see some questions that people have submitted.
No, I'm not seeing them.
Okay. The first question is, can you import attributes and levels?
You can copy and paste them. You can't import them. But then again, your attributes and levels aren't going to be that high. So you're not going to have a lot of text to copy over. You can copy and paste it the way Esther showed from a document.
Okay, next question is, how do you compare yourselves with Sawtooth software? What are the main benefits of this software compared to theirs?
I think we're more cost effective. I think we're easier to use. I think that Sawtooth is very fine software. Chris is a great guy, the guy who runs it. But it's got a lot of features, and a lot of that stuff you may not need. So we're kind of more cost effective, and I'd like to say we're more efficient.
Okay. Is there a limit to the number of attributes / features that can or should be evaluated?
There's no limit to what you can put in, but again, going back to the kitchen sink, if you're putting, 20 attributes in, you can't realistically expect people to evaluate all those because people simply don't do that. A lot of consumer decisions are made very quickly. I would advise people to go and read the work of Kahneman, who has a book out called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and he talks about type 1 and type 2 decisions. And this has become a very influential book in the behavioral economics field, because he really points out that a lot of consumer decisions, a lot of decisions we make during life, we make relatively quickly from a few pieces of information. And I think that if you're thinking that people, when they're deciding what kind of cereal to buy, are actually evaluating 20 different attributes, I think that's wrong. That's just not held up. So while there is no limit, it has to be behaviorally plausible. And you've also got the fact that, when you've got a lot of attributes on a screen, it takes time for people to read it. They may not read it all. And they may not respond accurately. They might just, click on the one that's always on the left because they got bored with the task.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is there the possibility of adding non-conjoint related questions?
Yes, you can put those at the beginning or the end of the survey. That's entirely possible. The conjoint module is kind of because it has to go through the different tasks in a fixed order, that's a module that, is fairly enclosed wherever you put it in the survey. But you can have in the survey lots of other questions before or after the conjoint module.
Okay. Next question is, considering the number of tasks and concepts per task, how do we determine what sample size would be needed to have a degree of confidence in the results? And i.e., what drives sample size selection?
Well, if you go back to that little metric that I gave that was derived from Johnson, that's what you really want to look at. But I do go back to what any statistician will tell you. You want as large a sample as possible, but you want it to be representative. A large unrepresentative sample is pointless. You need the sample to represent the target population. And I think people sometimes overlook that.
Okay. So the relative importance is obtained by the average utility for each feature?
It's a function of the range of the average utility. I think on the help pages there's an explanation of that?
Yeah, there is one.
Okay. All right. Next question. How do you post a survey to a panel in process?
Mm,
I
Well,
think
there's
it's a
several
little
different
unclear,
ways
yeah.
that, yeah,
not quite
there's
sure what that
several
means. Esther,
different,
you can try that.
I guess there's several different ways that you can do it. I mean, if you're using our survey analytics panel tool, then you can just integrate the survey into the panel and send out the invitation from the panel. If you're using an outside panel tool, like a third-party tool, we are integrated with, I think, almost 20 to 30 different panel companies out there. And all you have to do is just set up the integration, and we send a link. You give the link to your third-party panel, and it processes it as usual. And there's not going to be any issues with running a conjoint. If you are using your own proprietary panel, then you would just take the survey link and then copy it inside your invitation to take the survey.
Okay. Is pricing by respondent?
No, it's a flat rate. You can run as many conjoints to it as you like, with as many respondents as you like for one flat fee per annum. And that's why the chainsaw concept came in, because you can do lots of conjoints. You can do lots of little ones. You can do a few big ones. And even if you do one conjoint or 100, the pricing is the same.
Okay, the next question is one that I'll answer quickly, which is when can we have this webinar available for download? We are recording it, and we'll be sending out a link within a day to the recording and the slides. How do you best explain utilities to people that are accustomed to seeing straight percentages? What is the best way to interpret utilities?
A utility is really, it's just a number, and you can't really put them on any scale saying, how important that particular level or overall attribute is into making the decision. You could probably convert them to percentages if you wanted to, if that helps.
Okay. Can you export market share simulator results?
Not at the moment. That might be coming in. I haven't really thought about that very much, to be honest.
Is the software purchased or is this a service?
It's a service, annual fee. Our sales staff would love to talk to you.
Are you calculating utilities in an aggregate or on an individual level?
Aggregate. This comes up quite often that, basically there is quite a desire for Bayesian hierarchical individual utility estimations. Now, this is something that we are interested in providing. We're also going to be providing segmentation, and there's a chance we'll have latent class analysis as well. But we are interested in and actively exploring a way to provide individual utility values.
Okay, can you export the data for analysis and other tools?
Yes.
Okay. Whom do you typically work with in terms of the software? Marketing folks, market research folks, small companies, etc.
The truth of the matter is a range of all the above. I mean, we have people ranging from market research companies to tool manufacturers to all sorts of different people using this kind of thing. It really is across the board.
Can results from conjoint be used in a turf analysis?
Esther?
No, we can't use that.
It doesn't really fit. No, I'm going to say no to that one.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.